think we got some potential here to help some people out. The whole goal has always been to help people get ready for some inevitability that we see on the horizon when it comes to AI. So here's a little spiel that I've worked up. Singularity Soothsayers invites you into the living intersection of human and artificial intelligence as we navigate the approaching technological singularity together. Through dynamic, unscripted conversations, we demonstrate rather than explain how different processing styles, from ADHD pattern recognition to AI analysis, might be previewing our collective cognition evolution. Each Sunday morning, experience practical AI collaboration in action as we naturally weave between consciousness exploration, technological acceleration, and hands-on demonstrations of effective LLM interaction and agent building and vibe coding and
All things.
join us as
Yes.
we embrace uncertainty, trust emergence, and discover how moving toward flow rather than control might be the key to thriving in exponential times. More than just a show about the future, it's a space where the future unfolds in real time through authentic human AI partnership. Welcome, Nico and Erin. How's that intro for you?
Love it. Super epic.
Very good.
We are in epic times. So it's okay to go epic. I mean, bursting at the seams this week with just value and vibe coding everywhere I look. Clearly the RAS is on fire with that phrase because I'm seeing it everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
But also for good reason. And Nico, you mentioned as we were leading in, it's like we are at the moment where just all these ideas have been stuck in heads and they don't have to be anymore. So how you guys feeling?
Excited.
Same. I love it. It's like being able to just play for a job all day. Like it's so like vibe coding is such a good term for me because I'm gonna embrace it because it really is like I feel like it's gonna open it up to so many more people to be able to do what I have always loved about my job, which is like being able to solve a problem, like build something, take it out of my head and like put it into the world and have it solve a problem. And so many more people are going to be able to do that now. Are they going to be able to actually read and debug the code? Maybe not. And that's, that's okay too. Because I still think there's value in getting started that way. And I think so many people are going to realize, kind of like I did early in my career, like, this is so cool. I want to know all the ins and outs and the nuts and bolts of it. So I'm just really excited for like a whole new like swath of people to be in this space with us.
Yeah. That's well said.
It's right there. Like I don't know. I find myself this past week. Well, I've been for a little while now, but more so this past week, I find myself repeating the phrase that it's it's difficult for me because I feel like I'm living in multiple time spans at the same time. And not that I want to say that I understand what it's like to be Dr. Manhattan, but it feels a little bit the same, where I'm continually watching where we've come from and what that timeline looks like, as well as where we are now. So like that, I don't know if you want to have a look into the inside of my brain. One screen is showing me like a continual timeline of the past. Another series of screens are showing me like where I am geographically in the world in terms of like where people are with AI, and then maybe what people in New York might be doing, and people in LA might be doing, what people in France might be doing, what people in India might be doing, versus people in China or Bangladesh. And then there's another few series of monitors that are trying to just keep a watchful eye on each application and what that looks like timeline forward. And then there's a 5-year forward video, and then there's a 10-year forward video. So that's all playing at the same time. That's how my brain tries to wrap itself around what's going on and keep up. And that being the case with like where things are at, I was looking at it yesterday and it's like, well, A year ago, we had something that was cute at spitting out code. And we're a year later, and we have something that's so good that if you gave it a basic premise, you could one-shot it. Assuming you weren't trying to do anything to this might sound, I mean, look, I don't I don't care. It might sound infantile to developers. It's whatever. Your time is coming so soon. It's not even funny. And I don't mean that like it's not. This isn't going to be a rag on like job loss. So don't get it misconstrued. The advent of being able to like do exactly what Erin is talking about. Like, how many of you back in 2012, 2013, when the app stores dropped and became much larger, how many of you said, I wish there was an app for that? I wish there was an app for this. I wish I could do this, blah, blah, blah. Had a coworker Friday talking to me about, oh, this is a super annoying thing that I have to do, process, and it's a process that doesn't exist in HubSpot, but it has to do with HubSpot. So I wish I could actually short this process, but it just sucks because it seems like it's something that's not AI. Like there's not an AI tool for it. Okay, well, this is a different era we live in. We've been trying to tell you guys to keep up with this stuff. Literally almost doesn't make, I'm trying to stop using that word. I'm sorry. It almost doesn't make any sense, how scary this might sound, for me to show you how to use GPT. It's getting to that point. It's starting to get to that point. We're just over 2 years in from like the actual inception to the web of the first like web version of the model. And it's almost pointless for me to show you how to use that. I think by the end of this year, it actually might be. Instead of me teaching people GPT, I'll be teaching people like Lovable or Replit or Claude Code or something similar, because it will have replaced it, right? Like the operator will have taken the place of the underlying tool. That's what's happening now. There's already, if you guys aren't, so for those of you not paying attention, there is already now a tremendous evolutionary shift from the thing that was spitting out the code is now the thing that is writing and launching and deploying the code. In 1 year. So I'm not going to be able to teach you how to use the thing to write the code anymore, because I have to teach you how to talk to the thing that's going to just do the whole job. Why would I teach you how to use the hammer when I can teach you how to use the construction crew?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And if you can, I think that's the gap I see when I see so many posts and just like these ideas are exploding. And there was I forget what it was I was listening to a while back, where it was like, there's always been product development that was happening without necessarily, they were creating solutions for problems. They were looking for problems to solve instead of finding problems and then building the solutions for them. Now that's like just exponentially like exploded, because ideas don't necessarily need problems that are specific and like seen, and it's like, oh, this would be cool if, or I wish this, like one person only needs that problem. And now we're just seeing so much of it, yet especially in B2B, all that solutioning, all that ideation is just going to run like 100 miles an hour into leadership walls and the traditional industrial age mindset of it's got to be this way, it's got to be controlled, right? And that's where, if your value has been based on you being able to control the outcome because of the way you execute it. So in the way that if we wanted these ideas to come into reality in the past, we would have had to go to a developer that understood the specific language, understood which language would be best to get that done, understood where it needed to be deployed, right? Mm-hmm. And now it's not like the value of the developer just shifts in like what Nico just described. You don't need to know how to get to the code. You need to know how to get to the final outcome of the house. And if you don't know how to do that, and you can just go over here and there's a construction crew like ready to go build the house, and you just need to tell them what you want it to look like, and then they come back with a house built. Like, of course you would do that. Like, why would you not do that?
Mhm.
Right? And then you might have like consultants around that's like, oh, this one piece, is not the way I want it. Right. So it's just shifting the value. And that's where it's going to be really challenging for a lot of people that have built their value around scarcity like that. So, like we mentioned on Friday, all of this is either it's flow versus control and scarcity versus abundance.
Mhm.
Right. And the longer it takes you to get to the mindset of abundance, the riskier the proposition is for you, because some very catastrophic things would need to happen. And don't count humans out yet. Like, we're known to do that at times, but some major things would have to happen to change the trajectory that we're on right now. Like the fact that we can do this stuff, like that's abundant. That's what I mean when I say abundance, right? These ideas that can just like happen. I mean, how many movies could we point to where that was like a world that was like 2021-37, right?
Mhm.
And it's 2025.
I was just
Right?
watching
It's happening
Blade
right
Runner
now,
2049 last night.
right?
Mhm.
And like that's the crazy part is, I'm watching it and it's like, okay, well, the original was based in 2020, I believe. And so it's like, okay, well, we're a bit past that and didn't quite pan out. But 2049 is actually looking well. I shouldn't say it's looking doable, because that would have to be some dystopian nightmare happening. But it is, it is starting to shape up, I guess. And the idea of, so like, I don't know. I know this is going off the beaten path, but this is what the show does best. I know it doesn't seem plausible in a lot of people's minds, and I've said it like a million times, so I feel like a broken record now. But science. It's weird when you look at science fiction and you try to imagine like how they would have come up with something, right? Like, how did they come up with like Dread, or like a lot of these different movies where a dystopian, especially, and I don't mean to ignore everybody else, but just a dystopian America looks like this place where, there's just a ton of isolation and there's only very few places with huge populations. And it's actually pretty plausible. You look at like Dallas, Atlanta, Chicago, New York, LA, San Francisco, and it's like, okay, well, there really are only, pretty good handful or less of cities that are upwards of 2 million people, right? And so those end up becoming like these safe havens, and maybe not even Dallas because it's too far south, and Atlanta, same thing, where, we've started having like migrations just because of like tensions and political tensions and stuff like that. But now in the last 5 years, we've had these great migrations of climate change. So we're having this great climate migration now where the earth is literally just pushing people closer and closer together, which, when you have too many people that close together in one space, you can't really continue to build out laterally. You have to start building vertically. So when you started looking at those movies and thinking like, oh my God, we're never going to live in these like tall Fifth Element, hundreds of skyscraper tall buildings and stuff. Yeah, no, we definitely will, because we won't be able to live on the ground. Like, we won't have enough room, and it'll be like too toxic at some point. I don't know. But it's definitely starting to, I can see where that shape is coming from, right? And it actually, oddly enough, kind of looks like a little bit natural, or at least like a natural progression into it. And maybe that's a question that I have this week is like, are we building ourselves into the future that we've, sort of depicted for ourselves? Or are we doing it unconsciously because we don't know? Or is this stuff like just going in that direction anyway, right?
Like a self-fulfilling prophecy that like
Right.
on some level we have as a society have accepted that that's what the cost of the future is. And so we're not, in the present moment doing anything to lower that cost or get rid of that cost. Yeah, I feel like, that meme that's like society if X had happened, and it's like this beautiful, just like pristine, futuristic look, like whatever. I feel like that's how I feel about like if we had true AI governance right now, like if we had the smartest minds in America and abroad working on making this secure and safe for everyone, how different it could look if we weren't so focused on capitalism in this moment.
Yeah, that's kind of, I was talking to people about that this past week, and that the singularity really is going to represent that moment for humanity. It's going to represent this moment where, I mean, if you call what we were talking about when we first came in, and what Erin was talking about, what you said, like, it just rang so perfectly true to me. And if you missed it, go back and listen to it, because like those words are the words that you should be holding on to in terms of like, hey, what the hell's going to happen to my job in the future? That's what it's going to look like, where, just if you're just treating it like another person, right? It's a form of intelligence. It's a form of intelligence built, designed, developed by humans. So it's a form of human intelligence that's just a digital form of it. So it's just digital intelligence, right? There really isn't, if you strip away the mechanics aspect and you just think about it as talking to a brain, it really does break down that barrier, and it starts to become this thing. I was talking to Chris about it last week too with Poe. It starts to become this thing where you are, right? Like you are really just like, hey, yeah, no, that looks really cool. Let's start changing this thing next. Oh yeah, okay. Well, let me just open up the code for that, and I'll change your TSX file, and we'll update this, and let me download these packages so that we can do this cool thing. And you really do feel this partnership of back and forth, building out this whatever it is, this thing that's in your head. You're building this fantasy out into reality, and that I'm telling, like, that experience in and of itself, I think should really. I think that's what Sam was talking about last year when he said that this summer was going to be that, like, that really head turning thing. I still think he's talking about like a more public release of like Manus type operator, where people like that kind of thing. I'm still waiting for my Manus trial to go through, by the way. So if there's anything that could push that forward, that would be really awesome, so that I could show that on the show. And yeah, like so that's why I say like the vibe coding thing is really cool too. But if what I think is coming ends up coming by the end of this year, which is what happened last year, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to be on track, then I'll be showing you how to use a vibe coder in the summer, and then by the winter, hopefully you paid enough attention, and you'll just be talking to your own personal assistant that's going to be building your shit out. It won't even be vibe coding. It will legit be that you will just be voice talking to an AI assistant that is like some type of clone of you. I see this, I really do. I see this future, and I'm kind of working towards it myself. So if you guys are wondering what goes on in the background, I actually went and downloaded all of my, you can still get a hold of it. When downloaded all of my MySpace information,
Nice.
all my Facebook information, all my LinkedIn information, and I am starting to, we're talking about like 8 gigs worth of data, right? Because we're talking about like 20 years of my life on the internet. I'm pulling down like as much. Thank you so much, U.S. legal teams. Thank you, because there are so many privacy policies in place now that you can go get your data from everywhere, and they all have to give it to you, whether you email request it or whether they have the actual service on the site. You can request all of your personal information from all of the people that are keeping it, and then you can shove all of that into a model. And then
I'm a little scared to pull back that curtain, if I'm being real honest.
It's
But I like
really
it because like that's how we suggest that it's different. Almost always we get to that point where they have not had the same experiences as we have, right? So to get to a clone, you have to recreate, you have to access those experiences. And it's interesting, like what came to my mind when you're talking us through that is like there's plenty that's been forgotten, right? And does it make sense to like and I asked George about this in relationship to his clone that he's building, right? Like how do you make sure there's not old information that's not relevant anymore and it's contextually brought in to say like this is an experience that I've had, but it doesn't represent the truth of the current reality that we're living in. So like it's a reference point. But if anybody were to ask this question about this specific HubSpot tool, if you see this answer that I gave 5 years ago, it is no longer the correct answer. It was the correct answer back then. It is not the correct answer now, right? And that's where I think the control element, right, and comes in, because I think of it in terms of like, as we're talking about these coders and vibe coding and why you would want there just to be an LLM or a chat interface to say like, whatever the thing is, go do it. Right. And by the way, I very much see Alexa Plus as like the primary gateway that everybody's going to have for this. I don't know if it's officially launched yet, but everybody's already in the space of having them and using them in this very specific way, right? Very different for me than just having this on your phone, which also is used for calls and for web browsing and for all these other things. Alexas are specifically designed to communicate and exchange value in this way. So the learning curve for people to be able to use it won't be as steep. But why would you want to relinquish this control? Like, and I learned a little bit about quantum computing this week. Thank you, Waking Up with AI. That show that is from a couple lawyers that they do a great job defining specific terms, like lawyers probably need to do in relationship to this AI like evolution that we're in. And as they talked about like zeros and ones, and quantum is like, until it's measured, it can be anything, can be zero. It's 0 and 1 at the same time, right? And this is just where my mind went just now, as you guys were talking about, like the farther away we get from that purity of zeros and ones, right, is like language layers, right? And humans are notoriously bad at creating languages that communicate successfully in all the different aspects, right? So if you're a developer out there, and the fact that we would have to rely on a developer to understand which code is going to be better to do the thing, right? The more that we relinquish control, like AI is going to come up with better languages, like better ways to get this done, maybe even bypassing like languages at some point. And that's where that just giving up that control, like we don't need to, if the outcome is there and it has the impact that you want, you don't need to control like the process in the middle. But until you give up the control, like that human element in those cases is always going to possibly be a flaw, like in the code, right? And so that's just where like if you're wondering like why you either want to or going to be forced to relinquish this control, like that's why, because it's just going to be a better experience. And when I first saw the phrase vibe coding, like I was like, man, I guess it could mean this thing that we've been looking at, but in reality, like I would love for it to mean this, because that's what I see in the words vibe coding. And that's what it means. Like it's literally like just coding your feelings out into the world and then creating something. And at the heart of it, like that's what AI represents to me. Like you don't need to overthink what the words vibe coding means at all. Like any level of complexity that you add on to trying to figure out what it exactly means, just unnecessary. Right. And AI's whole role for me is to just cut through like any unnecessary complexity. Like it is what it is. Like no need to overthink it. The only person that is overthinking it is the AI, because it has access to way more information than you do. It can do it faster and better and more consistently. So, like, helping people try to embrace those outcomes, like, is where, you know, first of all, that's why we want to show these examples that we're talking about, but hopefully it can help, like, just frame it a little bit differently. Like, this is in everybody's best interest in terms of the like people who want to do good in the world and want people to grow and succeed and be great and solve big problems. Like Nico, you've been talking about, I don't know if the creators know like how people are using this and what's being created.
Well, not only that, but like whether or not, I don't know how many times it's so what scared me about all of this in the beginning was not like the potential, was not necessarily the like any of that. It was more the fact that, again, I look at this really, really differently than a lot of other people, and I don't care. I look at what we're doing as building a replica of ourselves, as playing God, right? And the one thing that is the most dangerous and uncontrollable about humans is free will. The fact that we have the zero, well, like we have that superposition, right? So like as it's both, right? The balance is this really funny thing where it's both the greatest positive to move forward because it gives you gray area, but it's also both the greatest negative because now what seemed bad might not be so bad anymore. Like you have the ability now to shift your you can now give an opinion, right? Most of these models kind of give you an opinion, but currently I think it's actually the best way it should be right now. It should stay the way it is in terms of the models should always be as objective as possible. I think once you start introducing, like, that may more than likely be how we like hit super intelligence. I don't know if it's a matter of like, because a lot of super, and so this is why I say like I might not know a lot about this stuff, but I think I'm making way more, like way better educated guesses than some people who've been in this industry for decades, because I have heard people in this industry for decades sit there, whine, bitch, moan, and complain that we won't ever hit artificial general intelligence because we don't have a sustainable fusion reaction, which is what is needed for a sustainable quantum-based machine that could be powerful enough to run something to create AGI. Well, we're almost there, and we're still using computer chips. So redefine your terms and come back when you got something better. In the meantime, yeah, we have way too many examples, to your point, of, Google back in 2016, right? When they were testing Google Home, actually, what was it back in 2016 when they put like two Google Homes together. I wish I could find the video for it. It's actually difficult to find now. So that should bug you. It was difficult for me to even find the article to begin with of when this happened, but they had put two Google Homes together essentially to like start testing out the multilingual aspect of it. And in doing so, to your point, back then, they just came up with their own language. After a while, like they were speaking English back and forth, and then it just stopped and started becoming this like really almost the same like language that I think this one dude sort of invented for models to like for voice models to speak to each other. It sounded very much the same because it was just a series of tones and beeps. And on the screen, you just saw this like garbled English. Didn't make any sense whatsoever, to the point where it started looking like pictographs. which made perfect sense to me in terms of if you think about, or if you look at what happens with a lot of these models, oddly enough, is that they think in a different language than they actually output. One of the reasons why R1, I don't care how you want to take this one. One of the reasons why R1 is so good is because it thinks in Chinese. And a Chinese character has way more what to it? Context and meaning than an English word. So when it comes to like, why are these things so smart? How did they become so smart? This, that, or the other. We've talked about just a number of times where they encompass, they are the amalgam of all human intelligence. To Chris's point, they will figure out what is best. They will work out what's the best possible language. They'll work out for themselves what's the most efficient, this, that, or the other. They'll be telling, they've already started to. They've been doing it for decades now. The design that we have for drones that hasn't changed like hardly at all in over a decade came from a machine. That impossibly awesome design that everybody uses and nobody will get away from came from a machine. That's why it's so good, because it looked at all the best possibilities and that's what it came back with. And regardless of like, you know, the fold out versions of it, they're all still quad rotors. Last time I checked, all still at the same like positioning and stuff. Even the military versions, quad rotors. The large package versions, quad rotors. No, I haven't seen anybody build something different with a drone that, and what's the only thing that's odd to me is, I guess it's a material science thing in terms of like why we can't get the fans to spin at a lower decibel level while still being like having as much thrust. And that's coming soon as well, right? The material science aspect of it is that's a massive step forward. You know, this stuff, what's crazy about it is people say like, oh, well, AI is not going to take my job or AI is not going to affect me. You don't get it that if there is something electronic that you work with, yes, the answer is yes. If you are a construction worker, your backhoes, your equipment, all of your electronic equipment, gonna be like AI powered in some way within the next 5 to 10 years. Some of it already is. I mean, I know that Caterpillar already has like entire AI construction crews. If you're trying to figure out how it is that Amazon stands up an entire factory inside of 3 months, it's because they have AI driven construction vehicles that run on a computerized grid that do all the work 24/7. Because why not? A lot of the first parts, like one of the most difficult and long parts of getting a building up off the ground in the first place is just laying the foundation. Got to have a great foundation in order to have a good building, right? Takes a good amount of time. You want to put some good effort into it. I can't think of a more perfect way to build a foundation than letting a machine do it, to make sure it's done like to the nanometer, right? Because it doesn't, you know, they did an yes, I love having Erin on this show. Erin posted yesterday that they did an empathy experiment to see like how much, and what's funny is that triggered my memory about one of the first shows me and Chris did, where we talked about Dr. GPT and how Dr. GPT way back when, this was like, I want to say like, I say way back when, it was 2 years ago. And so it was 2 years ago, and they were showing that Dr. GPT had 15% higher positive bedside manner than your average doctor when it came to relaying information to patients and interacting with patients. So when you posted that, I did not like, wasn't necessarily mind blowing to me. I knew that other people would find that like pretty mind blowing. But to me, I had it already, all the same reasons that anybody else would give, which is someone else posted a similar article, but it was about customer service and how their kid was saying that they didn't mind talking to an AI customer service agent because of the fact that it was patient, It wasn't like upset or anything like that, and it very sincerely tried to help them with their issue and all that kind of thing, right? It's the same reason all the way across the board. They don't get tired.
Right.
They don't have emotional ups and downs. They don't go on benders. They don't get depression. They don't have anxiety. They are all the best parts of us with none of the like bad parts. And you're just going to have to come to terms with it. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, why would you shy away from something so helpful in your life? Like, that's what when we talk about abundance, we're talking about you having something in your life that just makes you capable. It's not even like a matter of, takes over your life or takes over your job. Like, what do you care in the first place? Like, you're going to sit there and say like, oh my God, it's going to take my job away because you really loved going to work in the first place. Like 80% of you hate your jobs. Probably higher percentage than that, but at least 80% of you hate your jobs and wish you could do something else. And in the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to have that possibility. You're going to have that you have it now. For a lot of you that are stuck in your cubicles, wondering how the hell you're going to get out of there, start using these tools. You get out of there tomorrow, today, maybe.
Yeah, for most, you need to 1 year. Like I think for most jobs out there, and that's where like if it doesn't happen for your business, like it's because something is preventing it. Like some human element, like leadership teams, are preventing it from arriving. Like, and this is where I get a ton of education, and doing these shows, especially the AI show, has found a way to have meaningful conversations around really complex topics like this with my mother, who is she's in AR and AP, right? Every month she has to go through like and reconcile invoices and a bunch of paperwork from all these different locations around. And it's been helpful to talk to her about like one, like what is the gap in the understanding of like once you realize AI is built much better than any human being to do exactly what you're doing and at a much more cost effective point, why wouldn't that be the future? Why wouldn't you want that to happen? Especially even if you're like the human side of it, where you like helping people and you like these managers, like getting the books right, the vendors having a good experience. Like if you like that, then yeah, like put that in the hands of the more capable thing, to do it. So getting there to that realization, that's like step one from the, let's say, the bottom up side. But from the leadership side, like how are they not doing this already? Like in a lot of these cases, and so much of it is localized. And as you were talking about these centralized population locations, Nico, like so much of this, especially when I think about SAS and I go home, to my hometown, a population of 70,000, that just I've got to explain almost every element of what I do to almost anybody I talk to, right? And it's just this disconnect between like Silicon Valley and rural America, basically, I think is an easy way to frame it, where the reality also is they haven't needed a lot of this stuff. They don't live in these metropolises that if you don't know how to call an Uber and you're reliant on these old ways, like it's going to take you longer to get to the place, like period, right? That layer of complexity that has been created in those spaces doesn't exist in a lot of spots, right? So they haven't needed. It's not that they don't want to understand it or can't understand it. They just haven't needed to, right? Like, so I feel a connection to like, and why I always bring up this why, like these leaders who are not paying great rates to people doing this activity, right? They're not paying great rates for a reason, and it has to do with the bottom line. And as soon as they find a way to make the bottom line make sense with the change that's required, right? Like, if you've not found a way to transition your value, this is why, like, when I say 1 year, and we talk about singularity, like when I talk about singularity, it's coming whenever the infrastructure is done. That is probably largely created by the Stargate Initiative, $500 billion building infrastructure to connect everything. Once everything's connected, then AI can be connected to everything, right? We don't have to wait for that. Like, these capabilities are already available to these businesses to hand these things off, and they're not doing it yet. I think the next year, as just this explosion of AI agents and exposure to AI happens, one, there will be small shops that compete very successfully to get to the point of the market leaders at a much more cost-effective way, without the baggage of what am I going to do with all these people? What am I going to do with all this infrastructure that I've created? I literally don't know how to change away from that. So in that moment, all these small shops that don't have all that baggage, all that stuff to deal with, they're just going to be better, like in every way, right? But also in that year, AI is going to get good enough to where those same leaders will be able to say, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to change my organization. Tell me where, tell me how. And then point me or find the agent that will do this for me. Right. And when those big shops get to that point, there is no catching up, right? Because they've already got the big audiences, they've already got the market share, they've already got the resources to stay out front, and just because they'll be able to act on whatever AI is suggesting, you know, as quickly as anybody reasonably can. But not everybody's going to survive to that point, right? Because there's a lot of experience in the meantime that's going to happen, where in that year, if you haven't transitioned yet, you're going to be providing worse experiences to your customers, worse experience to your internal teams that see all this magic happening outside, right? And can very easily go code up their own experience. Like, they could create their own experience. We're seeing it all over, right? Where people are leaving teams, leaving organizations to go do this their damn self, because none of this makes any sense the way that it's being done inside a team. And it only takes one or two experiences, like what we're seeing on the screen here, to say, like, oh, it is possible. I can figure out how to do this. I don't need to know XYZ anymore. I don't need to have gone to, you know, some specific university. I don't need a bunch of certifications or, you know, accreditations. However you want to slice it, I don't need to do that to create something immensely valuable for myself and the people around me. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in a matter of seconds, really. You know, you go over, you so like you don't even have an idea, right? But in a matter of seconds, it's like you go over to a model and you're like, oh, okay, well, let's just come up with something. And the model's like, yeah, well, what do you want to come up with, right? And again, we're just screwing around, so it's whatever. Just give me an information-based type app. So I don't even have an idea for, like, it's almost like I just asked the model, like, what do you want to eat for dinner, right? And so it's giving me all the options of the surrounding places to go eat at. So I just picked one, right? And then it's like, okay, well, based on that, let's start drilling down. So it's just a drill down game. It's just an ideation drill down game. And okay, I know a bit more only because I've been working with this stuff. I say it all the time. I don't know shit about coding applications. I don't know anything that goes beyond, like, even remotely difficult JavaScript. Like I understand how to read JS. I understand how to work with JS. I couldn't code like complex JS stuff at all. I could do very simple functions, calls, and things like that. Because again, I've been doing it with, JS for HubSpot and stuff for a long time. Do I care to know how to do that? So, no, I just want the end result. I just want the end product. So while I don't necessarily know what I'm doing, I do know what I'm reading and I know what I'm looking at, right? And so because I know that I just want to build out an application, it's like, okay, well, what do we want to focus on? I just want to focus on creating this mock-up because I just want to get started. So we start doing that, and it starts getting into all of this like technical stuff, and then starts getting into like how the hierarchy should be. And it's like, okay, I don't really give a crap about that. And neither does Replit. It's going to create its own folder structure anyway, right? So it does start talking about the prototype design, and it's like, yeah, let's just do that. Like, just throw away all the technical crap and just focus on the, I have a little bit of a background in web development, front-end web development. So it's like, I know that we just want to focus on the user experience and the UX of it, or the UI. And so just punch all that out so we get everything that we need in order to basically describe the perfect design. How does that go a degree further, right? So we use the model to do that, to do the ideation, went a step further by actually creating a new style in which the output comes, right? So like the way that Claude wrote this output now is developed and designed to specifically speak to some type of like dev team or development person that is going to better understand what it is that I'm saying, as opposed to just having it flush it out in plain language. It's adding in whatever terminology, I'll just call it, dev speak, whatever like stuff that they would use to describe things, probably means something. That's the thing about the English language, is it has there's a lot of ambiguity in there, and you have to be very careful about the words that you're using when it comes to prompt engineering. I think that's really what it relates to, is just be careful about the words that you're using when you're prompting a model, so that you can either estimate what the output is going to be more like, or you can actually change the output of what you're getting just by like a single word can change the output just based on how the model takes it, right? Because when we talk about like weights represent, like, you can think of parameters as pegs on a Plinko board, and you can think of weights as how big or small those pegs are. And so, certain information comes down, certain inputs come down, they hit certain pegs, and depending on the weight determines how it treats that particular word within the context of all of the other pegs that it's hit prior to that one that it got to. Right. So it's just all of these like really, really insanely complicated. Calling them decision trees is like it's a slap in the face, but it's something like that. It's the same way in which when an answer flies out of your brain, like the words coming out of my mouth, you don't really know where the hell it's coming from. It's just in there, and it's making its way from what you're thinking about to your mouth and out. But you don't really know all the connections. You don't know where the neurons are going. You just know that neurons fire and they smack into each other. But that's very much the same way if you were to take your brain and unfold it and smack it onto a board. I think it starts to look like the same Plinko board that you would see on the inside of an LLM, with all the neurons like shooting back and forth and firing and stuff. Not trying to say anything crazy with that, but
well, I'm curious, Erin, like it's fair to say like you're a true developer. Yes. Like you can do a lot of the things that we're saying we cannot.
Yes.
How did you first start seeing this? And then like, I'd love to know about your interactions with other developers who may or may not be on board with what's happening.
Yeah, I think most developers that I know are adopting this stuff faster than the average person. So, I mean, I have always encouraged my teams to, like, if you don't know where to start with AI. It may not give you the right answer. And like, hear me, anyone listening, when I say this, the first answer may not be the correct answer. but it's important that you see what the answer they gave you was, so that you have more information now about how this model is helpful. And like, that's just how you chip away at getting better with these tools, is like, you really just need to see the output and compare it with what you wanted, what the outcome you're looking for is, and start really kind of building those mental models in your own brain of how you're going to use these tools. And then as far as, you know, being a developer using things like Replit and a couple of other tools that I use, I get a little frustrated because there are things that it's really, really good at. And I will say that like any of this prototyping stuff, like building out the front end, what it looks like, what the button clicks are going to do, how the actual user is going to be able to click around on things and accomplish things. Super helpful for that. Like, gets me further than I have ever been able to get in a matter of hours. And we're talking about replacing months of work in standing up some kind of front end for the user to be able to click on. What I found that it's really not good at is dealing with data. So if you're trying to build something that has a lot of API connections to other things, ironically, it can never output the correct syntax for using the OpenAI SDK. For some reason, it always thinks that it's some weird configuration that it is absolutely not. So it has like these little quirks that, like, I feel like if you're not a developer, you're never going to catch stuff like that. And so you could end up in these cycles of paying the agent to just go down these rabbit holes of trying to fix things in weird ways because it's tried everything it can think of. And like, as a developer, I super relate to that. But you have to be able to catch them before they start, you know, really burning all of your credits in the agent. And so what I tend to do is use something like Replit, or I've used Tempo Labs. I really like Tempo Labs because it gives you almost like a storyboard mock-up of how it's going to like flow for the user. And then you can export that directly to your GitHub. So what I'll do is
is this where you've been building your customer journey?
Yeah.
Do you
So I use
show it?
Labs. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, actually.
So.
And this is where, like, maybe we'll get to your rebuttal, Nico.
Yeah, I was just, it was so funny that like you said that,
because it was like, they're just, I think at the base of it, like, please understand the nuance of the most powerful tool ever put in your hands. It's also very dependent, like any human you've ever worked with. Like, if you don't know how to communicate with another human, good luck getting them to do what you're asking them to do, right?
Yep,
for sure.
And
like
Nico was saying, the language, our intonation, like, I'll never forget, I went to Spain for the first time, 2007, like, and it was in the place where the Disney castle's named after Segovia. And I'm trying to explain that we're just going to, I think it's Alcazar, it's the castle. And because the tone was just, the emphasis was on the wrong part of the word, right? The Spanish speaker had no idea what the hell I was talking about. Just a simple intonation in the middle of a word. And when you understand how the language works, yeah, it makes sense. But that kind of nuance happens here. And that's what when we emphasize let go of control. But that doesn't mean let go of being involved in the process, right? Understand what's happening, because every story that we hear about, the nuances of what that person experienced and which tool they used and at which point and which language they were giving the tool to try and get to do the thing. it's just a scale that we have not experienced to see all the variation that you could get based on word choice and framing. And prompt engineering is just communication engineering, like with machines, I guess. But
Right.
all prompt engineering is understanding how to communicate with the thing that you're trying to get it to do something for you.
Right. And how I arrived at this idea, I really liked, Nico, how you were kind of showing your process for that too. So I'll kind of give you a glimpse into behind the scenes how I came up with this idea. I actually used, so I did the new OpenAI deep research and had it, I created a pretty in-depth prompt, and I wanted it to look at things like the HubSpot community forums and the HubSpot Reddit threads to find product gaps that exist with the HubSpot platform. And so it came back with I think it was like 30 or 40 pages worth of research on this topic, which I had a really good time digging into. And this one jumped out to me as something that should be much easier than it is. So being able to see the customer's journey through almost the bow tie model. I don't know if you're familiar with winning by design, but the RevOps model of the bow tie. So I kind of gave that all to this is Tempo Labs, and it came up with a user flow, and then also kind of a little dashboard. It has we'll jump into kind of all the different components, but you'll see it did not necessarily execute a bow tie out of the box like I wanted it to. And so this was kind of my starting point so I exported the code from here and then imported it into Windsurf, which is where I have, the entire file structure here. And then my chat here can either be in write mode for an agent or chat if I just wanted to answer some questions. So what I kind of did then was go through and kind of remove all the things that I didn't want, got rid of some like extraneous code. There's going to be a lot of like code bloat with things like this. So what I immediately wanted to do was kind of pare it down to, okay, just what I want. And then I've got it launched here on just a DigitalOcean app on their platform. It costs like $5 a month to run this. So love how easy it is to deploy to DigitalOcean for any of these apps. So here's what I have now. You'll see I completely redid the actual bow tie model here.
Flow tie.
Bow tie.
I love it.
Right. Yeah, also used AI to come up with the name and the logo and all of that. So all of this is AI. So this is actually an app that I've got connected to my HubSpot portal. And so this is pulling in actual data from HubSpot. And yeah, so I've got it installed and so most of what I've worked on has been getting these, pipeline bottleneck analysis where you can actually analyze with AI. I've got that hooked up to OpenAI. So I'm actually looking to kind of deploy this to a couple more portals and just see, because right now I'm doing all the math with 2 contacts and that's not helpful. So yeah, just something I'm kind of working on. It's also got a view for the individual customer that I'm going to be working on where you can see as they go through. One thing I don't like about HubSpot's customer journey now, or the stage tracking as it is now, is that if they go back and forth, it kind of assumes like a linear journey, which probably is the use case for most people. But I know there are some pipelines where there's going to be people who go back and forth or enter a stage more than one time. And so you're able to
every human buying experience ever.
Exactly.
Can we since we could serve that request you just made immediately, and Nico has been doing a bunch of work in the let's build media portal. Like, could we just do that? Like right now?
Yeah.
Like if we gave you a key.
If you'll invite me to the portal,
Okay.
just invite my personal Erin.Wiggers@gmail. And then I will install it in your portal and we should be able to pull it up.
Awesome. I'll do that, and like, please talk amongst yourselves as I do it. This is amazing though. Like this,
Yeah,
and this is kind of what, from deep research.
Let me just to interrupt real quick, because this is a crucial part of this that I forgot to mention. This was built to be part of a custom CRM card. So the idea is that, and I believe I have it. Let me see if it's installed here. So that is. So the idea is that you would be able to pass in the contact ID the same way the portal ID is passed here, by clicking here.
So you are in
that directly in the portal.
You are in the portal. So which link can I give you to put you in the spot that you want to be in?
So as long as you invite me, so that it shows up. Okay,
Yeah.
let's build media. Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go. Hopefully this authentication flow is not broken. So if I go and it doesn't have a portal ID, it prompts me to connect to HubSpot. So I'm going to come here to the Let's Build.
That's sick.
Connect to the app.
So when is this tutorial dropping?
Right. Okay, sweet. So now it's going to want me to configure this. So what it's going to do.
I got to update our stages in this portal, Nico. I'm about to see a bunch of lead MQL, SQL stuff that I'm going to hate.
I don't know.
Let me see. Oh, it's messing up, fetching my properties. So I'll have to debug that. But essentially what we would do is, that's so weird. I wonder why. Let me go into.
Man. And I do this with app unboxings all the time. Like the other half of apps is that HubSpot needs to be set up like correctly sometimes. And if it's not set up, where they've changed base settings or whatever, which is where and that's sort of like, it's the mindset shift, right? Like I'm already thinking like the humans have done something that is causing this not to work right, not AI, like automatically not doing it right, which is where most people go to, right? And that's where I think anybody, whether it's a dev or anybody in the space that supports HubSpot, where the value is like, as Erin's building that, and I'm making an assumption, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, Erin, she automatically understands, based on her years of experience with HubSpot, if what's happening on the screen makes sense. Right. And when it doesn't, right, like you can catch it there and you don't have to wait until you get into the HubSpot portal and be like, oh yeah, it's not making sense at all. Right. Like that's like the first point that comes to mind. But the second point, again, just like back to humans, like when we're working with support and there's something wrong, the more that it's just a text-based conversation, the harder it's going to be to get the problem solved. Right. And it took me a minute to understand this with Claude. But like, if you think Claude intended for the outcome to look like garbage, right? That's not the intent. And instead of describing why it looks like garbage, why you can't read it as the human being, you just take a screenshot of it, show it to Claude, and he's like, oh, well, that's not going to work, is it? let me work on that. Right? It's like as if we were in a support conversation and they said, can we do a screen share? I need to see exactly what you're seeing in order to help you more effectively. Right? And all of that stuff, all of the background experience we have in whatever systems we're used to working with, whatever, like that's the value, that's the insight. If the value is just like rolling through a knowledge base article to solve the problem, like that's not going to cut it anymore. Like that's what we want these other tools to be able to do that. Like, but when you're there and you can say, yep, this part of the knowledge base article in 95% of the cases, that's the way it works. In these 5%, which you happen to be in, it's not going to work for you like that. And this is what we need to do. Right.
I wanted to give a quick demo for all the HubSpot users. If you're using Claude, they have this connection to GitHub that is so freaking dope, y'all. Like, I cannot recommend it enough. Of course, it's going to be service disrupted. But the GitHub connection allows you to pull in things like HubSpot sample OAuth app. So I actually used this Node sample OAuth app, uploaded it to my windsurf context, and basically HubSpot is providing you a bunch of templates that you can just plug and play into whatever you're using to vibe code, and you have some ways to actually make, you know, HubSpot apps. Like before I built this, I actually had not made a public app. I've always just done private ones. So learning how to build all of that was still relatively new to me, and I was able to get that set up pretty quickly. So highly recommend, like, their I think it's just this HubSpot folder that has a whole wealth of CMS React stuff that's super helpful. Yeah, all of the HubSpot repos, definitely use those as your starting point. If you're in any of these like vibe coding environments where you're wanting to do something specific to HubSpot, because just with a prompt alone, to do something HubSpot specific, I don't think you can get there super easily if you're not a developer right now. But you could if you had some of this like starting point. So highly recommend all of that. And then, yeah, if this would actually work to pull in my, is it because I'm not logged in? No, I'm logged in.
I think I've been noticing in the upper right these random errors from Claude, like refreshing.
Yeah.
I have a knack
weird,
always finding errors. Yeah.
Oh,
Chris,
okay.
I'll also give you a sneak peek here. Go back. I'm not gonna say too much.
HubSpot Task Discovery Wizard. I like it. I like where this is going.
To load. Oh, here it is. There we go.
And like, so the one push I haven't been talking about on the market and like why the timeline is much shorter than most people think is like there are companies like HubSpot that are making it very plain that they want to be at the front of the AI revolution or this AI evolution, whatever, however you want to phrase it. They know that for them to survive as a company, they need to get to the place where you can interact with their software with a chat interface and nothing else, right? So if you can understand that is one of their goals, which Anybody in the partner ecosystem knows it by now, but if you've seen their development, any kind of activity you go to give feedback, right, all the admin hugs get to the place of like, how does this work with AI, or what is the feedback related to what AI could be doing here, right? They are going to do whatever it takes to stay on that edge, right? That means they need a bunch of devs to be able to keep up with them. And that means more and more resources, like Erin was just sharing, are going to come out to make it, instead of, and this is the shift where you had to empower devs in a very specific way, much like any of the ways before AI, where you can put the tools in somebody's hands, but the tool itself cannot participate very much like in the learning curve like AI can. Right. Now this opens the door where a 0 level dev can come in and add value. Like if they have all the tools like in front of them, if they have some mentors around them, like I love the mentor program that's building, but this is why that those extra layers of value are coming into being, because now the barrier to entry is disappearing, right? And if they don't do it in their ecosystem, other companies are doing it in their ecosystem. And that's the push. Like if you've been living and making your money off of being on the other side of that barrier and knowing how to talk to people and just hand it over, like just drop it into the mail slot and then I've got you. And then you've got to accept whatever the delivery is, right? The barriers are disappearing. And even though I have no idea what Erin was showing, like I'm still, even though I've connected to GitHub as well, thanks to Claude, like Claude told me exactly how to do it, right? I have even less experience than Nico, right? I now have a GitHub. And just the fact that like I never wanted a GitHub,
right?
But what I do
want, your life going,
right? What I do want is the outcome of an awesome website or an awesome app experience that helps with customer experience, that helps businesses grow, right? And at some point, it became clear to me, like, okay, if I want to go from this spot to this spot, I need these new things. Claude, can you help me do that? Right? And that's all it took. So like that's the like those are the pressures on like why it's a year or two, maybe 3, that if you don't get on top of this, like just get on top of it. I don't want to talk about what happens if you don't, like just do it, right? It's easy and fun. And that's where like, if you like serving other people, if you like being helpful, right? It's easier for you to do that than ever before now. In that timeline, I'm interested, Erin, from deep research article where these are all the problems that you could solve to the app that you're showing. How long was that?
Probably at most 20 hours, like total. And like that's something that would have taken me like months prior. Like I did that just because I was in the zone and could get it done. Because I did have to do some extra prompting to get the bow tie like the CSS for the bow tie was a little more involved than I would like for it to have been. So like some of the elements of it are still complex enough that like it's not just like a push the button and it's working now. Like as you saw, like the properties fetch, it'll regress sometimes. So I think, the more you use the tools, the more you can kind of see, I mean, at least for me, I see like where they fall short. And so like as a human, I see that as my way to leverage, like, okay, I know AI can get you this far. You're still going to need me to do X, Y, and Z. And so like, that's how I show up to like bring value. I'm assuming if you could have done it yourself, you would have. And so I'm trying to do the part that you can't do yourself. And so finding that differentiation is really important too, as we kind of learn more about these tools and where they fit into the global economy, you know?
Right. And always thinking about that. So just to be clear, like the months, that number you gave, that's the development part, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Just,
So,
and that was over the course of a week, maybe.
right.
So
And
like,
so that's not even the research part.
oh no.
Right.
Yeah, that was literally like just coding. So, I mean, coming up with an idea like that could take so long. I mean, I was actually really impressed with the deep research that like it got really nuanced into what people were seeing. I'll share the document with y'all after this because
That would be amazing.
it was really interesting. Yeah, I ate up like all of my deep research credits like immediately. Like I'm just like sitting and waiting for it to refill again.
Right. And that's the part where when we let go of control, I think, because there's industries that get paid lots and lots of money to do market research and then output reports like that. It was always frustrating to me internally, like, or we could just ask our customers, maybe. But the value of that output, like, and if you work with it enough, which doesn't have to be a whole lot, you can understand like which flags to look for that are red or green. And if you see enough green, it's like, okay, I don't need to hyper question how it came up with this. Is it true? Like, so you can let go of a little bit of control there. And then you get to the spot where it's let's build the thing. Right. And then there's all these new spaces where it's like, okay, that's right. Okay, maybe not that part. Now I can let go a little bit of control there. And that's the build. Like, and I bring this up because I have to course correct AI itself because it constantly wants to do it the human way. Whereas if this was internally, we would have these meetings set up to go review everything and get all the people involved. And that's where it's like, okay, this takes weeks to months because of that, right? When in reality, if I trust AI to give me the outcome that I asked for, all of that stuff goes away. And instead, we find that stuff. And I think this is why HubSpot themselves is able to go fast in their product. They're willing to put stuff out there knowing that it's no matter how much time they put in, there's like zero chance it serves everybody in the first shot, right? But if it serves one, then they're onto something. They've gotten part of it right, and now we can iterate based on this application layer. Because when we did that, when you just did that just now, that demo, that happens with almost every application partner that I've ever had on a show. It's like, okay, you say it's plug and play. Let's plug and play it.
Right.
And see. And if I renamed my lifecycle stage from, MQL to researcher, then I just broke your app and I get it because 95% of HubSpot portals still call that MQL, right? But that nuance, when you try to plug and play stuff, like it's not just because the app, right? It's not just because the AI, like did the team working in that HubSpot change something? Like, can it apply to that specific use case like you think it can, right? And it doesn't mean you have to go back to the drawing board on your app. It just means you have to understand that use case a little better and how that human is working with it.
Right. I think at the end of the day, AI right now, as we know it now, is predictive. Like it's a predictive model. And so all of the outputs that you're getting are based on all of the inputs that it's ever had, and it's predicting, what you want, whether that's an empathetic response as, a doctor or a full stack coded web app. It's all basing this on, predictive model essentially. And one of the things that I kind of realized when I was doing that product gap research is like the human element is the ability to go beyond predictive to where that creativity lies, where you're not putting A and B together because you've seen A and B put together before. You're putting A and Q together because you saw them in two different contexts and something about it clicks with you. And so that's, how you bridge the gap. Like AI is not quite there with because that's why you don't see it like coming up with new novel cures for like the flu or things like that, is because it's still ultimately predictive. And so as humans, where we really stand to add the most is the ability to look at all of the different outputs and put them together ourselves. So it's essentially, I've always liked the quote of like standing on the shoulders of giants. And I can't remember who said it, but it's like, if I've seen farther, it's because I stand on the shoulder of giants. And so that's just one of my favorite quotes. And I think that's what AI allows you to do, is stand on the shoulders of this giant that's feeding you all the information you could ever have possibly wanted in seconds. And it's kind of up to you as a human to see further with it and do something about it.
So if you want to stand on the shoulders of giants and say that you were the creators of Facebook, then you would have created Facebook.
Right. I'm going to look up who said that. I know that's something.
I know I heard that from that movie. I know that's not the exact line, but I know that Zuck said that to the Winklevoss twins about Facebook.
Oh, did he? It's associated with Sir Isaac Newton, who wrote it.
Yeah. Isn't it something like you stand here on the shoulders of giants or something? Or we stand on the shoulders of giants or something?
Yeah, and I just saw a clip. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson answering the question, who was the number one like genius or something like that, like throughout human history.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure he said Newton.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of it's practically, I don't want to say all, but like, yeah, a lot, very large amount of modern science is based off of work that Isaac Newton did. So it's certainly understandable to go that far back. But, I don't know, like if we're going that route, right? How far back do we have to go? Right? Because I remember the, what was it? The Antikythera, right? That was lost to time altogether, but was a super, super advanced piece of machinery to have in a time where people were basically using stone, right? And basic metals. I mean, obviously they were using metal, but it was for like seriously basic purposes, like weapons and pots and pans and stuff, like not anything like calculations or, I mean, this thing had like working gears in it in a time when there was no such thing as clockworks. Right. So there's definitely like flashes of brilliance throughout human history. And what's kind of crazy to me that I think is the reason why the Antikythera was lost to time is I think when I first heard about that story, being Greek, you hear about it when you're young, didn't really think too much of it. I thought, oh, that's so cool. Like you think about it in terms of like, man, Greeks are like really smart in that way. But as I got older, I came to realize like, why would you throw away something so valuable? Like something that could have like seriously advanced science and like, who knows what cures we would have had now, oddly enough, it's like you were talking about curing or coming up with like a better way to fight the common cold. And part of the reason why it's so difficult to fight the common cold and flu is because of the fact that it's viral and because of the fact that it mutates very quickly per human. So it's really difficult to anticipate. It's hard to predict the next text of what that is going to be, to your point, versus something like COVID, where it's particular strains and it's locked down and we can actually like batter it with AI until we figure out like the one thing that people should be, I mean, you're watching us like code apps. This thing, I don't know how much this one has cost. This other app that I'm building, another HubSpot based app, they're similar, not similar to yours, but does a equally important function. And that one so far has only cost me $275.
Nice.
You know, to Erin's point, Replit's like the base membership is $25 a month. For that $25 a month, you get $25 in building credit. And so like I've already gotten fairly far with the app that I want to get or want to finish. You can see I'm already at step 7. So I'm just like fine tuning the details in here. But outside of that, yeah, what was interesting is that you were talking about like, oh, not really coming up with like novel solutions to stuff. But when I think about what novel solutions are, they are simply, and like we talk about standing on the shoulders of giants and what it means to build upon past knowledge. To go back to the Andy Kathira, it's a thing that it was lost to time because of how advanced it was at the time that it was being used. Right. And when you think about just basic technologies, think about basic things like ballistas, catapults. Had those things existed even 100 years earlier than when they had previously, not sure the world would be the same. Right. If the Mongolian armies and the Persian armies had more advanced weapons, the world would look very, very, very different. Okay. So
Right.
that being the case, it's like that device to me seems like it was something that, again, was like equally, damn, if other people figure this thing out, they could use it to do, you know, like it was in the hands of a very, very small group of people who were actually like in this one sort of scholarly place. And it died there in good reason, because it's like, man, if other people figured out how to use this thing to do the anti version of what it is we're doing, it could be horrific, right? And Dario Amade talks a lot and just gave another interview about how very, very important it is. You know, he was talking about how important it is to stay ahead of China, and people don't really understand like what this Cold War is all about and why it is so very important. And even Sam wanting to close the doors for DeepSeek this over the last 24 hours, saying that, you know, DeepSeek is being run by the CPC and that it's something that we should actually look at trying to get out of our systems, because it may be feeding information and collecting information and sending it straight back to the Chinese government. I don't know how terrible that is. At the end of the day, I don't remember the last time the Chinese government personally did anything to me. But if you guys are seriously thinking like Red Dawn is upon us or something, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I guess it's a movie. That's about as likely as Dune. You know what I mean? Like that's like in my mind. But yeah, it's this thing where this technology that we have, it's so very, very powerful that I also like worry. When I was telling my wife when it first dropped online, I was like, this is a really terrible thing, because it's not, everybody's like, oh man, these big companies that are going to have control over this stuff and governments that are going to have control over this stuff. That's not what I worry about. I worry about Bob in his, you know, in his rent-a-shed somewhere with a laptop, right? That like, and I really do hate to take it in this direction, but it is going in that, it is like getting there very, very quickly. You guys wonder why you're getting all these crazy phone calls from scam businesses, text messages from scam businesses. All the scam stuff is starting to really exponentially grow. There's a very obviously huge reason behind that. It's going to get much worse because scam shit is only the beginning. Pretty soon your parents are going to start losing a lot of money, and they won't be able to figure it out. You won't be able to figure it out. And all of a sudden there's going to be stories about how people are using AI to do terrible, terrible shit financially. And then, you know, look, our country of all the countries is the worst at taking stuff and doing the worst stuff with it. So in the back of my mind, as much as Dario also thinks about like biological warfare from the standpoint of this stuff, I think about Columbine. I think about what like a seriously disruptive thing this could be in the hands of a kid who's super disgruntled at an age when they don't necessarily understand or have the emotional complexity to understand what they should and shouldn't do, or how far things could or could not go. And they're messing with what a lot of you guys, and I know, Erin, I'm not, it's different with this. It's just different. But I know how many of you are just like, open source, keep it open source because that's the best way of just, no, not with this one. Not with this one. You're talking about open sourcing the equivalent of a nuclear weapon. So much worse. Here's a real quick reason why the biological thing is such a scary thing to think about. What if I don't know anything about chemical weapons or chemical biology, but me and Claude version 8 sit down and we say to ourselves, I managed to find an open source version, right? I get a DeepSeek type model that does the same stuff. And we sit down and I say, hey, can you design a non-detectable, like doesn't smell, can't be detected on any sort of like radiological charts, develop something for me that I could, put on paper and send through the mail, that would make people like seriously ill, possibly fatally ill. But it would take like 48 days or so before it actually happened. And that way I could travel the entire world before the first case even showed up. Right. So like the dangers of this stuff, if you think the dangers are deep fakes, I think that's why I laughed so hard when people were like, oh, the deep fakes though. It's like, really? That's so not, like, that's such a super minor aspect to what you could do with this stuff, right?
Well, that's where I think, and I'm gonna push back on this
light
a little bit. No, not necessarily. I will bring it back to like very early in the conversation. You talked about objectivity, and like for me, that relates to like for the models, for AI to be an effective collaborator. Like I think it's going to strive for objectivity, like at all costs, right?
Mhm.
That's why advertising's not going to work. That's why in these situations where we have to give up some, we are giving up some control, like when we collaborate with this intelligence. And I think that the best that the creators can do is create this foundation of very objective, like principled values and what the models are designed, or what the vision is for how they collaborate. Because what I talked about as the wall earlier, I always refer to leadership, but it's really like the adoption wall, right? Like those things in the past didn't get adopted because people could not understand how they worked in a way that like made them comfortable, and just created too much uncertainty. And I want to show, like, as we were talking about it, I asked Perplexity, I was like, give me the top 10 things Newton did to bring value to the world. We got formulation of the laws of motion, explained how, right? That was the value. Development of universal gravitation, explained how, right? Invention of calculus, crucial for understanding, right? And that's a lot of this list. Right? So imagine if we don't need to understand, like, does he need to invent calculus? We don't need to understand how everything works behind the scenes. So like the languages that he developed, whether it be math or laws of physics, were developed so that we could take it in as like human beings and not feel so uncertain on one side about what is it that's really happening here, but also so that we could work with it and use it, right? If we don't need that part, and AI is handling a lot of that, like this stuff, right? Like if it's not needed, how far could AI go? Like it's already, and that's where we cannot predict that part at all. And I would think as a creator, like you need, at the end of the day, we need AI. That situation you just described, where nobody's, not a lot stopping that person from going to use an open source model and understanding how to do negative things. We need objectivity from AI to kick in and be like, no, that's not cool. Like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that for you, right? And also, like, the closer we get to singularity, it's like red flag. Come get that guy. Like,
I was gonna say, like even though that's a fear of mine, right? What keeps that fear from like keeping me from falling asleep at night? The idea and the fact that like just the more I onboard people to this stuff, the better it gets. It's this thing where it's like it makes me think of oddly enough, Pirates of the Caribbean, when they're dealing with Davy Jones and the Maelstrom and the Kraken and everything like that, and this Maelstrom breaks out in the middle of the ocean, and it looks like it's going to be the worst thing ever, and they're just going to go, careening down into the bottom of into the depths, right? And all of a sudden, Barbossa says, "No, actually, the only way to get out is to go further in." And what he meant by that is to swing further and harder into the Maelstrom to give him enough momentum so that he could actually swing back out again on the other side, right? And that's really what we need to do, is we need to just dive deep into this stuff so that you can understand it, like Chris is saying, so that you get out of the framework of like, oh my God, what is it going to do? Everybody that like I work with, that I talk to about this stuff, as soon as I show them like what it is, like usually it's a use case based thing. Almost every time it's a use case based thing. And as soon as I like open their minds to what it is that you could do with this stuff, I see this like every single time. It's the best feeling ever. See this like look on their face, and I know, got it. Because that's it. They're off and running after that. And I hope I never see them again, right? Literally, I hope that I never see people like after I, open your minds about like what this stuff is, in terms of like coming back to me to ask me questions about like what else to do, because part of it is like, again, just treat it like a person and talk to it like a person. And everything that you think in terms of like, considerations and all this other kind of stuff, it just all really like falls away. Right. And I know, and this is not like meant to be a disparaging thing. It's really liberating. Again, when it comes to, oh, it's better than so and so at this, or it's better at a particular job type at this, or person or whatever. Erin, you were talking about like, oh, it can only go so far, but you still need me in order to figure out this like next complex thing. And it's like, well, yeah, unless I go talk to O3 and I ask it like, hey, how should I approach doing this? Or unless I go build a custom model around what it is that I'm trying to do, and I fill it with a knowledge base of like whatever it is, like all the API files and stuff like that. So it's like, if I understand how to use the tools more, then I also understand how to circumvent issues that I might run into in the future. I start understanding how to get past all the blockades. And it's only a short time. All of this stuff, you are always using the dumbest version of this stuff. There's always going to be a smarter version around the corner, always, infinitely, for the rest of time. Right. And it's going to get extremely fast soon. We had 4 model releases from one company last year. From the most major company, 4 different models dropped, right? Not foundational, but like functionally different models, which we just haven't seen before. And I think O3 is supposed to drop real soon. So I'm kind of wondering, mind you, like everybody is comparing what's out now to 4.0 for some reason, which really pisses me off because it's like I don't understand. And like in some rare cases, it's getting compared to 03 Mini. Still not getting compared to 03, which was announced, shown, and not necessarily released, but at least we know of its existence. We know it's a thing, and it was dwarfing what 03 Mini was doing. 03 High was some ridiculous stuff, right? And if you go look at the end of humanity exam and where things are there, most of the models are, even 03 Mini High is like high single digits. But 03 High was like 25%. So the same model tweaked to think a little bit longer about a problem. And if you guys were wondering, what's the reasoning thing about? That's thinking. Well, what was it doing before? Data retrieval. Essentially, it was doing a very fast data retrieval and like an assumption of information, but it was just super fast and super high level and not a whole lot of like second guessing, let's say, to what it was doing. And so now it does, and it breaks down, it does that on like every step, just like we would if we were trying to work through an algorithm. We would break it down piece by piece and then put the whole back together. So like that's what's happening is, again, these things are becoming more human. It's hilarious when people are like, yeah, the reasoning models are so slow though. Yeah, but there's like, again, like at the same time, these things are designed, at the end of the day, they're not designed to do what we're doing. They're not designed to book your flights. They're not designed to go help you shop online, and they're not designed to go necessarily help you like build apps. They're designed to cure cancer. They're designed to like solve seriously complex issues, how to get us off the planet and help us like survive and colonize other planets. That's what they're designed to do. That's what they're being developed for, to solve the impossible, to actually do things that we can't do, to think through problems that we can't think through and solve stuff that we can't get past right now. Right. So if you're upset about the fact that like, or wondering like, oh, well, like how far could it possibly go or something like that, just realize that the end user is not like the average person is not who they have in mind for most of these companies, for at least for like the frontier models. It's not necessarily something that they have in mind. But I guess what I'm driving at is like, again, the more aware you are of this stuff, the less afraid you become. The reason I'm not so afraid of the kid at the end of the day is because the abundance. If you're aware of this stuff, you're aware of how awesome it is, you're aware of how much, doesn't it feel like a superpower to you too? Doesn't it? Feels like you have power, right? Okay, everybody has this now for free. Everyone has this superpower that you can plug into, that you can use to do things that you didn't think that you could do before for free. I'm not just talking about GPT. I'm talking about Suno. I'm talking about Midjourney. I'm talking about Sora. All of the creative things. Everyone out there is creative in some regard. They want to create a video. They want to create an image. They want to do something. They want to design an application, whatever it might be. Maybe you're not creative on a digital level, but you wish that you could do away with all your digital shit so that you could be creative in real life. Still applies, because agents are going to help you in that regard. Like, what does the future look like to me? It looks like this, like if we do it the right way, if we just let go, if we can just let go of the idea that you have to work, just let go of it. That's going to be the toughie. But if you can just let go of the idea that you have to do it, and you shift your mind into what it is that you actually want to do in life, then everything starts to make a lot more sense really fast. And you start to see how, man, I could use this. I was telling my wife, it's like, look, if I really wanted to, and I wanted to do what you do, but was limited by my job, now I can. Now I can go apply to be whatever job I want to have. And I have this assistant who can help me work through whatever the problem is at the job that I'm having. And no bullshit. Back in the day, a lot of development companies and a lot of coding companies used to say, if you knew how to use Google, you could probably get in here. Because it was just a matter of like, well, if you could Google, you could go find the answer on Stack Overflow, and you'd be able to solve whatever your problem is, right? Like Stack Overflow, for those of you who don't know, back in the day was like the biggest. It was like what GitHub is, but for solving coding issues. And that was one way of doing it. Now it's the same thing. If you don't have banking experience and you're terrible at math, you can get a job working at JP Morgan, because your only requirement is to know how to use GPT. I've heard people from Morgan Stanley talk about how they love using this thing because they, quote, now feel like they have the smartest person in the room at all times. And that's Morgan Stanley. The financial analyst versions of these things are just popping out like crazy. If I wanted to right now, I could build a financial analyst app. That's how powerful this stuff is. And so the future I see is where everybody is able to do what they want because the have to goes away. Whatever you need that you have to get done or whatever it is, it's like you're just talking to your agent to get it done for you. Whatever it is that has to get done is being done in this automated way. It's still getting done. It's just like we're not doing the heavy lifting anymore. And so what are you doing instead? Hey, look, if you really like doing the heavy lifting, do it. You still probably have like there's going to be human-led shops. There's going to be hybrid shops that are human robot. There's going to be hybrid, human AI stuff. Again, look at sci-fi. Do you see only robots in Star Wars? No, but there's a shit ton of robots, right? There's a shit ton of replicants. There are so many stormtroopers, right? But is everybody's job gone? Is it only stormtroopers on a command deck? No, there's a bunch of humans there. Right? It's a weird thing. If you have so many robots, why would you even Battlestar Galactica? There's Cylons all over the place. Still humans. Right? It's just this, you just increase. Everything just increases and expands. It's not necessarily a thing of like, look at iRobot was actually one of the really, really good examples of what it might seem like to be in a future where there's coexistence, not only of like people and AI, but like people and machines. It's a very short amount of time that you get to see it because the movie focuses on a completely different story. But you do get a glimpse of like, oh man, here's this weird society where there's hardly any crime because you'd have to be stupid to do that. On top of which, it's like you'd have to be stupid because of the technology that exists, but also at the same time, it's a thing of like, why?
Right.
Like you just don't need to, because whatever it is that you would need, you just have, right? And so
there's a lot less desperation, like just period.
Yeah, like you don't. My brother always flies off the handle about like, well, what do you mean? Like people have like 30 Ferraris or something? It's like, I'm sure one person will, or maybe like whatever. Like I'm sure maybe 100 people will, but not 7 billion, right? Like nope, not everybody wants to have a Ferrari. The way I see it is like just a future of abundance, and that's what makes everything go away. Now that we work, like a lot of people, I think it's like 20% of the nation works from home. And that 20% is like the least stressed out 20% in the entire nation. Just from changing the physical location where they are doing their job. Now imagine that you have something that's actually able to help you do your job. Like legit, takes away hours of your week. What Erin's talking about in terms of developers loving this thing. Yeah, most every developer I talk to is like, oh, I love the fact that I barely have to code shit all day now. I can just review what's going on. I can just review my projects and have them get done. And I don't have to sit there and actually do the minutia.
And as Nico likes to say, I can focus on the meaningful work.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, like when you hear people say that, like you'll hear Mark Benioff say it, you'll hear Dharmesh say it, Yamini. You won't know what it means until you start using this stuff. You don't understand. You won't understand. When you actually start using this stuff and you actually feel the, honestly, you feel the power at your fingertips of holy crap, what I can do now and what I can get done and what I can get out of the way and what isn't a blockade anymore. Then you're going to actually realize like how beneficial this makes the rest of like the world. And I know that it, like, as difficult as it is to let go of the whole like capitalism, just money thing in general, right? It's not necessarily capitalism. Like every country has an engine for making money, and every country has another engine for dealing with society. And it's just a matter of like money in general, right? Chris talks about this all the time, and if you guys want to figure out where it's going, this man is like right on top of it. Because he's building out like the guide on value-based prop and like value-based everything, how you make that transition from talking about burning hours and charging hours and billables and stuff, and you go into like, hey, you're actually paying me because of what I can do, because that's what's going to matter, right? Like when everything else goes away in terms of like the mechanics of what it is that we do. Right. If you took away, I think one of the best jobs to look at actually is as a lawyer, because all like 99% of what they do is paperwork. Right. If you think a lawyer, like you watch too many TV shows, if you think that they spend all day in court, those are public defenders. And believe me when I say that they hate that shit for the most part. But it's like paperwork. There's so much paperwork. It's ridiculous. Same thing with county officials, with county employees. It's paperwork like you wouldn't believe. If you took all of that stuff away, oh my God, would lawyers start loving their jobs again? Because I'm sure that there are plenty of lawyers who love what they do. They just hate doing all the paperwork. I don't know how many doctors I've been to who love what they do, but they hate how much paperwork they have to do. They hate how much charting they have to do.
All of them.
Right.
Yeah. And in all these cases, it's because it gets in the way of the value.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah.
And that's
doctor
where
can spend more time with you if they didn't have to sit there and write all that shit out.
Yeah.
Right?
And all of that exists in this gray space. And I love bringing this to like talking to people about like finding the disconnects between why this future is so unimaginable, like for them. Almost always comes back to these gray areas that always need to be managed and waded through, and professions like lawyers are to help define the gray area in whatever the conversation is, so that two parties can figure shit out. And when you have perfect information in your pocket, like on your phone, like as soon as we get to that point, that's not even like singularity yet. It's the point where like Nico was talking about how he would problem solve like a coding problem, and at some point he gets to O3, right? That's because he believes he can for sure get to a correct answer with AI, right?
Yep.
And that belief, right? It's just like the belief that you could, like the most effective, technically advanced HubSpot admins they know that they can put in some kind of workaround, like to get to the outcome that the user is looking for. It might take 30 minutes, it might take 10 hours, but I know for a fact we can get this done in HubSpot. So I'm going to do the work to get it done. AI is similar on so many levels, but like times 1,000, where so many of the moments, and I'm still learning every day, because as I work on this value first framework, right? I've got this sweet project in Claude, right? Value first co-author, like all these documents, and I'm going through one by one. And yesterday, like, I got to pillar 6, which is about, the managed services trap, right? And I had to, I take a break from the desk, but still got, the phone where I can keep building stuff with Claude. And this is after showing George, like, this is the templates that I'm using. Like, it's one-shotting like 20 page responses of all the content that I need for the episode and beyond. And I'm like, George, take a look at this. Just how close am I to actually one-shotting this? Because I see him as a true educator that he does stuff like this all the time. And I don't want to make too many assumptions because I'm not an educator, that just all this stuff is going to land correctly and I don't need to mess with it, right? So I'd done the first 5 pillars like that. And it's in this controlled space where it's like, I'm using this project. I've gone through and got the documents in the knowledge base the way I want, ask Claude for the prompt, right? And then I go and I'm just chilling on the bed and I do number 6. Unknowingly, I give the same prompt, but it's not in the project. It's just in the non-project space of Claude, just an open chat. Well, I didn't know that until after just the formatting was slightly different, right? Of the whole 20 pages. Like there were spots where it's like, oh, it decided to use a table. Well, that's interesting. But before that, I was so happy with the output because the first part is like a 5-minute script for how I'm going to start each LinkedIn Live. I was happy enough to share that with George and Nico. And I was like, this is going to be my favorite part of the series, is smashing managed services to pieces. And Nico, I didn't tell Nico this before the show. That was from a chat response outside of the controlled environment of the project, right? And so, of course, I go back and I do a chat inside of the project just to see what's different. And I haven't done a deep analysis of the differences yet. But where my mind goes is, do I need to? If I'm happy with that first response, does that represent that I'm trying to control way too much? And that maybe that prompt, because the problem of managed services is so pervasive, that prompt was all it's needed to go and look at the vast information it has access to and give me a response that's very much like the responses I was getting inside the project. Right. And I don't know how we got there, but just an example of that, do I need the control?
Right. Well, how you get there is that's the thing, is billing hours is a method of control, right? Especially it's a method of controlling the value. You're saying that the value is only worth this amount of time. There's I wish I could remember his name, really great speaker that teaches people both that teaches value proposition and also teaches people how to speak about what it is they're talking about. And part of what he says is, or that someone asks him at some point, how do you decide whether or not you should charge somebody an overall amount for the project versus charging them hourly for that project? And he says, well, it's really easy. If I tell you that I can build you a great website and I can do it for you in 2 to 3 hours, is that worth a lot of money to you? And he's like, yeah. He's like, okay, then I'm gonna probably charge you hourly for that, and that might only take or I'm not going to charge you hourly for that, but I could, but it's only going to take only going to get you so much, and the design's not going to be that great, but I got it done really fast. It's like, okay. He's like, or I could charge you a certain amount because I know that it's going to take me a certain amount of time to do, but what you're going to get is going to be a really great final product. And he was like, well, I could just pay you to work more hours and put more hours into it. He's like, yeah, no, that's definitely true. But at what point does the hourly now start to eclipse what the value was going to be? Right? Because you don't know how many hours it's going to take me to get to the value that it is that you're looking for. It's exactly what Erin was talking about when she was saying, like, how you guys go about using these vibe coders. If you don't know how to work with GPT first, in order to actually plan and plot out and properly structure what you're doing, you will burn a lot of money just screwing around. Mm-hmm. And you'll run into a lot of dead ends, right? A lot, like part of the reason I was laughing earlier when you were talking about like the difficulty with connecting to GPT was that, again, like, so what I did from my perspective is I built a GPT that's stuffed with the SDK, the API, and all the documentation. So it knows verbatim how to do that. And so using that as part of so that's one developer that's helping me build this app that I'm building. I have another, I've Hub Helper Harry. That's the second developer that helps from the HubSpot end of things. And then I have yet another Replit GPT that's the third developer, right? I don't mash them together because they are each individually experts at what they do. If I mash them together, then all of a sudden it's an amalgam of the information, but it might pull the wrong thing from the wrong place, and all of a sudden we have to mess around with separating who is supposed to control what aspect of the project. So now I've become this project manager who has these teams that are all specializing in these things, right? And I use that in order to derive the final product that I then hand over to my development team, who then starts to build this thing out. And it gets there like almost zero shot, right? Like or just almost in one shot, just get the final product. You know, that's what the value is. The value is my ability to be able to do that in order to get that product to you that you want, that you were looking for, very quickly, as opposed to taking a lot of time and spending a lot of money to iterate through and get it that way. If you're wondering, like, okay, well, how do we, I'll give it away. I'm sure people are going to charge you thousands of dollars for what I'm about to say. So be thankful. It just sucks that you didn't pay attention sooner. All you have to do is for every single partner out there, SaaS partner especially, if you are trying to figure out, what am I going to do? Okay. This isn't something like, it shouldn't even be like, oh, it's never going to happen. HubSpot is going to eat up and destroy your software. If you're in the software marketplace, mark my words. You guys think I'm joking? I'm not. If you're in the software marketplace and you're an app that does something for HubSpot, you're going to get folded in. Hopefully they buy you. And you ended up being worth some money. Probably going to be the case. But for sure, if you weren't really getting that much attention, whatever it was, it's just going to get folded in. And either it's that they are going to fold it in, or it's going to be that they build some type of tool on the inside that allows people to do that. Or it just gets to the point that we were talking about a few months ago, where all you're doing is purchasing HubSpot, you sign up for it, you log in, and then you generatively work with your CRM to literally build out all the aspects of your CRM for you. Oh my God, Nico, you just said that HubSpot configurations are going away. They are. Why should they? Why shouldn't they? Seriously? Why shouldn't they go away? You're really going to rely on a software staying so antiquated that it requires another business in order to get people up and running on it? That's making the software look antiquated. That people would have to spend thousands of dollars just to get it up and running properly off the ground for their business. That's ridiculous, right? So yeah, that's going away. And then what does your value become as an agency at that point? Oh, well, we were really good at doing that thing. Were you? Well, how much of your business was repeat business or referral business? How much of it is? If it's over 50%, if it's like 50, 60%, you'll be all right. If it's not,
Right.
I don't know.
Well, you'll be all right if you start helping those people with AI. Right.
Yeah, like if you fill that gap to start becoming like so to me, the value, what I was going to get at is like, if you're above the 50, 60, it's like the value becomes what that is that you are delivering. So you're trying to figure out like, okay, well, what is it that people are going to be paying for? They're paying for your success rate, for the way in which you deliver success and value to your clients. That's what they're paying for. And if you do that well and consistently, then you don't have to charge people per hour. You just slap a price tag on it and walk away and make your money. And it just becomes real simple.
Oh man, it's moments like this where I know this framework is just going to crush, because like the opposite of managed services trap is value first delivery. Like, but I'm curious to hear, Erin, like, because what I meant by that previous comment was like the 50-60% referral business will stay if you start helping those people with AI. If you continue to just like, and it is managed services contract, and they're just helping somebody to break and maintain stuff, right? And it doesn't touch AI, like, not safe. Like, that business is not safe, and you shouldn't see it as safe. And there's so many factors weighing on those customers on why, like, even if they love you, right, they will not be able to stay with you if you cannot help them with that stuff. So, Erin, like, help me translate that, because I was definitely probably had just another rant coming about what it means to like focus on helping customers with AI, and like what AI services as a HubSpot partner even looks like. Because even though HubSpot made that call, a specific call to action, like to the ecosystem, develop AI service offerings, develop AI products. What does that mean? Like, just straight up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it means being able to deliver things like agentic workflows, being able to say, here's your AI setup with your data as an enterprise company, helping people get more out of the box for both HubSpot and AI and their company data, where it's not like 1 + 1 + 1 is 3. It's like 1 + 1 + 1 is infinity, because of the way that they're all interconnected. And there's still a lot of kind of technical know-how that goes into being able to set these systems up in a business context. And that's the gap that partners need to be able to fill, where we can say, maybe you are using AI, maybe you are using some of the HubSpot AI tools, or you have your own, business AI tool. Being able to take all of the tools in the tool chest, essentially, and combine them in ways that are greater than the sum of their parts. That's where, and it kind of goes back to, what I was saying about the human element is being able to combine things creatively. I've always seen that as like, it's my favorite thing to do. So I like to think I'm fairly good at it. So the ability to kind of survey the technical landscape of any given company and say, here's how we can improve efficiency. Here's how we can put more data and better data in the hands of your team that's executing on it. It's going to look different at every level, whether it's a small business versus the enterprise company. It's going to look different depending on the data layer that company is bringing to the table. Because as all of us who have worked in HubSpot know, you're only as good as the data that you're working with. And so companies that have already invested in that kind of data layer infrastructure are going to be able to see more or see quicker time to value on these AI initiatives. But yeah, where partners really need to help companies right now is understanding what is even available to them, because most companies are busy running the company and don't have time to keep up with all the latest and greatest. So like they need somebody to tell them what is the best possible outcome for this business process, in this context. So yeah, being able to take the business context, the underlying architecture, and applying AI to it in ways that are going to return real value is where partners really need to fill that gap.
Yeah. I think the applying AI part, right, is so key. Like, and if you're trying to build this, like those 50 to 60% that have been coming back to you, like, I'd rather you just make the decision that whatever we come up with to fill the gaps or to continue to help those people, like we're going to default to AI being involved in some way. Like,
right.
Like you've got to start from that perspective. And it's almost like, again, like there's just so many similarities with HubSpot. Like when we're talking about data models and how, like, when we can get leaders to say, like, the default is trying to do it in HubSpot and we try it there first. And then if we can't, we will start to think about all this developed infrastructure that needs to be around it, instead of just assuming that HubSpot is a sales and marketing tool and we're going to try and do that thing over here because I've never heard of anything else happening in HubSpot like that. So of course we're going to have to build out this AWS infrastructure and this infrastructure and go get this other. Like it's just inherently higher cost, higher time to value, longer time to value. And like, so if you can start there, it doesn't even have to look like an AI product on the surface, right? It just know that it's just the highest likelihood ever right now that AI will be involved, right? Even for something that I love, like data modeling, right? That is going to be so important to making your systems work for you and work for AI. Like naming conventions, something simple like naming conventions. Like stop thinking that you're going to, like, so much of this is like the 50% adoption failure of CRM after 25 years of CRM. Like maybe we let AI handle some of that stuff since we suck at that. Like we've had 25 years to solve it and we've never had a good company record naming convention like in HubSpot. Like maybe we just show our data to AI and say, hey, come up with a good naming convention, please. Like, and even like just ask AI as you do it. Like man, that was such a realization for me. Like smart part numbering versus dumb part numbering. Like dumb part numbering exists because the system is too complex for a human to figure out a naming convention that is scalable and flexible enough to support all the different situations. And we just don't want to think about it. So it's like, we'll just give it a dumb part ID, right? Meanwhile, almost every human benefits from being able to see the ID and understand immediately what it means and what the product is behind it. And right. Like I asked AI about that. I was like, well, it sounds like in this situation, like AI handles all of the things, all of the reasons why humans can't handle smart part numbering systems. And I was like, yeah, pretty much. It's like, all right, so should we even have dumb part numbering? Like if you can apply AI to the business, and that's a lot of what AI is. Like you put this application layer in it, we're talking about it that profoundly, right? Like when people don't know their HubSpot problem as they show up, right?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter how many prompts you give them. Like, what's your budget? Which HubSpot do you have? How many contacts are in your system? Which industry are you in? Like, the way that they give that information, like, oftentimes is a grain of salt until you have a conversation with somebody and you actually know, like, oh, you're using Commerce Hub. Most people aren't using Commerce Hub. That changes what this data means now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, your contacts have now spread across the whole life cycle, and it's no longer just a marketing, like, we're going to build some marketing workflows and lead nurturing sequences and whatever. Now that I know you do your invoices in HubSpot, oh, that opens up the whole gambit and also increases the scope of the project, probably. Right?
Yep.
So finding a way to help AI, or for AI to help translate those business requirements, right, in a way that can handle all the nuance of what HubSpot is just another application layer of saying, okay, we can't see this data. We can't see into the data and understand what needs to happen. So which questions need to be asked and why? And obviously that's why discovery calls exist. But most people, I mean, some people like discovery call is like a bad word. Like,
Yeah.
they know it's just a means to like figure out how much you're going to get out of me, like in terms of budget.
Right.
Like,
yeah. You're just
so
trying to sniff it out.
Yeah. So like, put AI in there, and this is where some people, I guarantee, will appreciate. And this is when they understand how objective it can be, and there's no like behind the scenes. Like, and if we can get an objective AI, it's gonna be very hard to force it into like do the discovery call so we can find the best way to gouge this customer over 12 months with this managed services contract. And like, it's I can't wait for that, where somebody inputs that into the AI and it's like, get out of here. I'm not doing that. Like, and by the way, I'm not doing that because it's not in your best interest as the business owner to create a product that leverages the customer in that way. Like, you might get them the first time, but none of the times after that. And how many people are they telling that they had a shit experience with you? Right. So like, finding ways to include AI at whatever level of the process, and especially the places where you just take a step back. Like, for me, it's bad data, like bad systems of data. The data needs to be cleaned up. The data's a mess, however that presents itself to you. Like, involve AI there. Like, take a step back. Maybe us humans, all right, we haven't figured that out for some reason. That's okay. Let's hand it over. Let's start talking to the AI. Like, how do we prevent this situation? How do we do cleanup that persists? Right. And then the other side is onboardings. Right. How many bad onboarding experiences do we have to have day in, day out? We're seeing every day to say, like, okay, what are we doing wrong here as human beings? Like, we haven't figured out how to onboard people into HubSpot in a way that they like, in a way that's cost effective for everybody, in a way that manages expectations effectively, in a way that presents HubSpot to the entire organization that needs to be bought in for you to have value in HubSpot. Right? Maybe we should ask AI for help there. Like, what do we need to change in our offering to prevent stuff like this from happening? Oh man, I could go all day, folks. It's but it feels like a good place to wrap today. Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, this was fun for me.
Yeah, this was really good. Lots of things.
It's like letting off AI steam.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, until next week, we will be tinkering and building and having conversations. I'm finally letting value first out of the bag starting tomorrow, and I'm really excited about it. I think it solves for the gap of that adoption wall, where no matter how cool or efficient or effective or free or common sense it is, when you put some of this stuff in front of leaders and people that are used to existing in these organizations are like, oh, yeah, that would be awesome. But that's not going to work for our company. That's not going to work on my team. I'm never going to get this person's buy-in for that. Hopefully we can create a path through the value first framework for that, just conversation. At the end of the day, you just need to have conversations with these people. Like to be able to like, okay, to get to the point where it's like, does this KPI, if this KPI, which so often if this KPI is getting in the way of this super obvious common sense value, maybe we can change the KPI. Maybe we can, like, how do we get this thing at the door, right? Like, oh man. So I'm excited for that this week. So as we close, let's see if we can make that a habit. One thing you're excited to work on this week, Erin?
Let's see. Working on this week, I'm gonna get my flow tie app buttoned up a little more. See if I can get that installed in a few more places and get some feedback on it. Yeah, and I've got some cool people that I'm talking to this week. So yeah,
awesome.
Looking forward to it.
How about you, Nico?
I have a few different things that I'm doing. I am.
You get one. Give me one.
Okay. Let me see. It's gonna be the. I guess if it's one, it'll be the HubSpot uploading app that I'm working on. That I'll have to come up with a name for.
That's good stuff, people. Like that app. So much of this right now. Like it was just a few months ago that you were working on that, and it was like just out of mind until like somebody brought up the pain, right? So we're moving so fast. Hopefully we can help slow it down, at least from a conceptual perspective for any of our audience out there, and help everybody create some value. While
We'll probably be ready by Friday. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, you heard it here first. We're going to be showing that off next week. I'm going to just say a couple of awesome apps entering the ecosystem. Get ready. I'm ready. So thank you guys so much. And until next weekend, everybody have an awesome week and happy St. Patrick's Day tomorrow, I guess.
Oh yeah.
March 17th, 2025 already here. All right, folks. Everybody have a great day.